That cold case you're listening to? Nasty stuff. But you know what else is a crime? Missing even a moment of whatever you're doing to go on a drink run. Luckily, there's Drizzly, the #1 app for alcohol delivery. With Drizzly, you can compare prices on the biggest selection of beer, wine, and spirits, then get them delivered in under 60 minutes. So download the Drizzly app or go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com today.
That's all that matters. Courtney, the voices are coming from inside the house.
Voices inside my. Okay.
Wow. Wow. Horrible. It's 110 degrees in New York. If we melt in the middle of the show, actually, we shouldn't complain because it actually is 110 degrees in parts of the country.
And maybe we should start the show. Hey, everybody.
Hey, everyone.
It's us. It's Courtney Amy. It's ImmaLetYouFinish. It's ImmaLetYouFinish, show 53. Are we at 53? Are we 54? 54? 54? I think it's 54.
The age we keep telling ourselves we are?
Well, I mean, the age I'm about to be, actually, in July. And we have a special guest today.
CEO and co-founder of Giant Step, Maurice Bernstein.
Yes,
so he will be joining us in a little bit.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about what they have going on currently, because as you guys know, like, they're still a really amazing marketing company and just all of the cool stuff throughout the years and ongoing, blah, blah, blah. So how are you? How was your weekend? This was the big Pride weekend. It's done. Did you go outside in your neighborhood and see any of the energy or the block party around from you or any of the stuff?
No.
Got it.
I went outside of my neighborhood. I left the city, but I went to my friends in Westchester and just basically, ate. Yeah.
Right, essentially. Yeah. Okay, gotcha. Good.
Yeah, good. That's it. But I was proud to be eating.
Yeah. Listen, I did a very adult shit. Like, a friend of mine lives around the corner. He has a deck. Went on his deck. We hung out there Friday. Went to rooftop brunch thing on Saturday, and then Sunday I did laundry very pridefully all day. And slept on. I put my red sheets on the bed, so I feel like that was one of the colors in the rainbow. And they were crisp and clean, and I prayed and I was prideful.
That works. That's we find pride in who we are and what we can be in any way we can, Courtney.
Any way we can.
Every day is a winding road, and I don't know why I'm quoting Sheryl Crow because I don't like her. But anyway, that's how much the heat has gotten to. I know you do. I know. We don't even have to have a rundown for a podcast. We could just basically, you could name a name, I could roll my eyes and discuss.
and I'm like, I love them. I love Sheryl Crow.
Yeah, I know. All right. Well, speaking of love, let's talk about the BET Awards a little bit, which I did not watch because A, I was coming back on a train, B, I forget they're on, and C, Sunday night is 90 Day Fiancé. So.
Well, here's my rundown. Lil Nas X is getting better with his live performances.
Okay.
Cardi B is pregnant again.
Good for her.
Queen Latifah essentially acknowledged her same-sex loving ways, and nobody even batted an eye.
She's married, right? And she has a kid.
Yeah, and she thanked her family. She thanked finally at the end, she thanked Ebony, who and her family, and said Happy Pride.
Right, there you go, boom.
She looks beautiful. It's great.
She's gorgeous.
What I love is that it didn't even get a bat and eyelash, and which is actually what it should be these days, right? It's like that's what we're fighting for. Where it's like, okay, not a
whatever. Yeah, whatever.
And my friend wrote the pre-show, and she had a great pre-show, so I'm happy that it happened. They're gone, and
yeah, there was no
Megan was the big winner of the night. To me, it's just the state of the last year of music's been weird. So it wasn't that moment where you feel like, wow, I discovered something new or felt something new, but it was fine enough.
It's fine. At this point, if it goes off without a hiccup, It's fine. They celebrated the women, which is always great.
And audiences being able to be back, you know.
Yeah.
Great.
With baby steps.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Speaking of women, there's a new Mary J. Blige documentary on Amazon. You and I both watch it. You and I have opinions about it.
Yes.
We're both huge. All right. I mean, we will now state the obvious. We're both huge Mary J. Here's something that you might both find shocking. We're both huge Mary J. Blige fans. I remember the first time I heard her on the radio, I was like, holy shit, what's this? Love her.
Mm-hmm.
I've interviewed Mary a couple times earlier on in the career. I mean,
feel like I was at the What's the 411 launch situation and all of that,
It's the documentary it's short. It's only about 80 minutes. It is supposed to be an examination of the What's the 411 album, which is
My Life.
My Life. I'm sorry. My Life. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. Which is considered by most her best album, even though it was her sophomore record. What's the 411 had broken huge ground, introduced her queen of hip hop soul. My Life is her sort of singer-songwriter confessional album.
Well, it's her story, and it's the one that people really have tied to her the most.
Yeah.
And it's, it's about pain. And so the whole documentary is about what was going on in that period of her life.
Right.
Now, here's my thing.
And we're going to agree, so go for it.
Disclaimer, yes, I do love Mary J. Blige. I do. But I also feel like she has lived in this story and has told this story a lot. And I know people feel like, all right, there's a new perspective and we're talking to people who were there. But I just want Mary to have more of a story of perseverance and survival. It seems like the one that people love the most is her wrapped up in this turmoil and depression. Yeah. I found it quite depressing. And then I realized that anything around her, I always kind of find quite depressing and heavy. And it feels like her story is living in this heaviness. And she's been Mary J. Blige now for a very long time. And I would hope that her years, and I know trauma is something that really does stay with people. I just hope now that she's put this documentary out there and said it, that she can have another narrative for herself, because it does seem a little bit a narrative of sadness more than where to me it should be a narrative of resilience. And I guess that is the message people want you to get across. But to me, it always just feels, what I remember at the end of everything is just heaviness. I don't remember resilience.
Yeah, that's the thing of her. And again, love her, but as someone who covered her, look, yes, there was unbelievable. There was very pronounced trauma. She spoke about, some of it was public, the relationship with Casey, though we didn't know all the details. We know that she had a drug and drinking problem. And I'm not in any way minimizing all this, but yes, it almost seems like, there's always like a hook when an artist is putting out an album for the journalist. And it became like a running joke, like, oh, the hook this time is Mary's going to dive into her journey and speak her truth and talk about the trauma. And at some point you're like, good Lord, woman. I mean, like, lighten up a little bit. Not that even when she's happy, she seems sad. And maybe she's just that woman. I mean, She did go, the marriage and the divorce are not spoken of at all. There might be an NDA or whatever.
Well, the marriage and the divorce is much late. She wasn't married in My Life.
No. But there's tons of current stuff in this. This covers the My Life reunion tour.
There is, but that was it. Still, like, if she's really kind of focusing on My Life, and then you come back with the reunion tour, right?
Yeah.
You're really going to talk about what was happening during that period,
right?
Like that other husband and that later shit was just,
he was a mess.
I
mean, anyway, I will say this. It is worth watching if you're a fan. In a lot of ways, Courtney and I are not the target audience because we've sort of been in the trenches with this stuff. It is worth watching. It is always worth watching Mary sing. She is one of the most, is she technically the best singer? No, she is not. But every time that woman sings, I feel it much more than a lot of women who are technically good singers. She's sort of like Johnny Thunders. Could he really play the guitar? No.
Well, I saw her in her last tour, and vocally, it was one of the best times.
No, I'm saying she's gotten better.
Well, because I've seen it through the years, and there've been some shows where it was like, wow, and there are others where it was like, what? what is happening.
Yeah, so,
and that was early on. But this last tour, you know, this is a woman who clearly understands how to use her instrument.
Well, now,
now so much better. Like that, it was the royalty tour, her and Nas, and you know, Nas has a reputation of sometimes being a little boring on tour, but that show was great. He rapped everything you want to hear, and she sang a lot of the My Life stuff and a lot of stuff that you'd want to hear, you know, and was vocally great. I just want, now that this is immortalized forever in a documentary, I would love to see a different narrative for her, a happier, healthier narrative, and maybe a great album, because if I can be honest, I've not loved I can't remember the last full Mary album.
Oh, I can.
From top to bottom.
The one she did with Disclosure, the London album.
Did you love that album?
I liked it a hell of a lot. I certainly liked it.
Well, here's what I thought about that album. I thought they were good songs, but I found it interesting that all of those people that she worked with wrote big hits for themselves and big hits. And then when it came to these songs for Mary, I think she had good songs, but where were the hit songs?
The hits don't bother me as much. All right. You want to talk a little bit about, so we've been talking about Britney. Courtney in particular have been talking about the Britney Spears situation.
And we finally heard her speak for herself. No speculation from sources in this one. We finally heard Britney in her own words.
Yeah.
And what we heard, I think, was 20 times more shocking than any of us actually thought.
Yeah.
And it really brought up to me thinking about all the times I've been in the industry and I've seen a lot of men be really unstable, drug addicts, drunk, crazy, so much stuff. But no one has come in. Listen, do I feel like in the beginning her father stepped in to save her life? Sure. But to look at a woman who is about 40 years old this year, essentially saying, hey, I'm being told that this IUD's in me, I can't take it out, I can't get to my own money. I'm paying all of these people, but I have no say in hiring them. I can't just get in my car and take a drive. People are watching me take a shower in the morning. I was forced on lithium. And then you look back on all of those performances, right? And you see this person who's literally dead in her eyes.
No, she is dead in her eyes.
Dead in her eyes. And I have met this girl several times through the years. I've seen her in small shows from the beginning to everything. It is like looking at a different person. So to hear it in her own words was chilling. It made me very sad. It made me really angry. And it really made me think, why does this seem to happen to women where people get to come in and under the guise of I'm saving them, really control every aspect of her life? It's been 13 years.
Yeah.
13. Well,
I think, I mean, to me, and the bigger picture is what concerns me more. I'm obviously very sad about that this has happened to her. She received ridiculous legal advice. I mean, I don't even want to go into that. I mean, there's been a series of poor decisions on her team and on her team's team too, in terms of legal advice. She's had horrible legal advice. But
that's the thing. Those lawyers, what did she say? Those lawyers are forcing her, right? Because what did she say? I want to choose my own attorney. So
right.
There's such a weird thing, right? Where you feel like, what really happened here?
Well, I am concerned about that, but like I said, I think we discussed this. I'm more Amber Tamblyn, who's an actress who had been a child actress, I guess, wrote a really powerful op-ed piece in the Times that we posted on our Facebook page. And this is a bigger issue, like you spoke to. You know, when men are messy, it's romanticized. You know, very rarely men are allowed to be messy. Men are allowed to sleep around. Men are allowed to be a drug addict man is romanticized, right? A drug addict woman is fucking shunned, especially if she has children. God forbid you be a bad mother. And I'm putting that in big quotes because it's by a man's criteria what a bad mother is. But women are commodified much more so than the men. Women are controlled. I mean, it's not that big a leap for me to look at what they're doing to Britney Spears in terms of monitoring and commodifying her body, and a girl being denied reproductive rights. having to ask permission of her husband. There are some states where you have to ask your husband for permission to have an abortion. And I don't want to get into a whole conversation about abortion because I know it's a subject that might tick off people, and I have my opinions on it.
Well, but that's why it's our show, and you have the right to say your opinion and let them be ticked off.
Yeah, I am.
Sometimes you know what, people need to be ticked off.
Right, I am pro-choice. I don't think. But
when you and I've had to, and I really understand how you feel, especially when it comes to women's rights as a woman. And I always say this: it doesn't matter if I believe in abortion or not. Right. I don't. For me as a man, when I see these men yelling at these women, it's like, so you guys have cut off services. You don't want people to have services. You don't want them having. You don't want them to have birth control. You don't It's almost
what they want them to do is not have sex.
Yeah, or just be there for my pleasure.
Yeah, no. So
I don't feel like you have the right to tell any woman what she should do with her body.
Right.
Because let me just tell you something. If men could get pregnant, honey, there would be Coca-Cola. Sodas would have abortion flavors. You know what? They would. Because if a man could get flavor, you'd be would you be able to, can I get ginger ale abortion, please? You absolutely would. It would be a pill. As much fucking as men do, it would not be an issue. That I know for sure.
This is true. And I think as we discussed, to me, again, what's happening with Britney is very sad. I think it will be, I think it will be worked out. But imagine if a white woman of this much profile and money, imagine if this is happening to her, imagine what's happening to a 16 or 17 or 20-year-old woman living in a small town, a woman of color, an uneducated woman. Imagine what's happening to her. And that, to me, this brings up an issue of how these girls, and the men too, but women are commodified in a way that men are not. Women are in their 30s and still referred to as being girls. I don't hear anyone talking about Chris Brown being a boy or Justin Bieber being a boy. Justin Bieber fucked up right and left and was welcomed out. Chris Brown is still beating up women and is not.
Well, allegedly, don't say that. You have to say
I'll
allegedly.
Say it.
Well, no, because we don't know that to be true. Because this woman said he slapped her so hard that her weave came off her head. So that's you should be in the hospital dead if somebody can knock a weave off your head. So we have to say allegedly because we don't know what happened with that last situation. And there's been a lot of I'm not defending Chris Brown.
I know you're not. I know you're not.
But there has been a lot of allegations against him because he's that person that had been, thrown out and proven false. So I think that, first of all, they're all young people, and they were all young people. What bothers me the most about Britney is when people try to act surprised, but look at how she shaved her head. I'm like, yes. Can we also play back her life at that time and what was happening and how she was being treated and the mobs of paparazzi around her, possibly having these kids back to back, the flash wedding, just seeing from somebody who's worked with young artists, no one can prepare you for fame. And the level of fame that she got, there's just no rule book for it. There's no handbook for how to handle becoming that famous that was really the paparazzi time when they'd be 40 around your car and she could not drive and they'd be screaming and on the hood of the car. It was such a crazy time that I think we've watched this woman be dragged all over the place. And I think it's time to start having a little more compassion for people. It's like, I know that everything is quick clickbait stories and quick to want to be the first to put something out there and get whatever. But, it just seems like the whole of everything together ended up being a pretty treacherous situation. We watched it unfold. So I'm surprised when people act so surprised now that she's ended up in the place where she's ended up.
All right. I agree with you. We're going to keep an eye on what happens to this. Hopefully there will be a resolution.
They're back in court June 14th, I believe.
It's already
July 14th.
Yeah.
But there is an interesting thing. Her legal team has to file paperwork to dissolve the conservatorship, and that has not happened yet.
All right. Well, we will see what happened. All right. we are going to meet with. We're going to have Maurice Bernstein is joining us. Yes,
yes.
Okay. I just Morris. Excuse me. I should know better. Let's bring Morris in. I've known him long enough to know that.
So Morris is the CEO and co-founder of Giant Step. Giant Step, as you guys know, is still an amazing marketing company, working with amazing brands, amazing artists. They've always had the Midas touch of being able to choose really interesting projects, interesting just interesting companies to work with and bring all of that together in such a seamless way. You know?
Morris, can you, hey, how are you?
Good, thank you.
How are you? I don't know. Courtney, Morris, Courtney.
Howdy.
Hi, Courtney.
Okay.
So
I remember Courtney.
Okay, cool. And I hope you remember me.
No, who are you?
And you are. All right, so Morris, along we were big upping you, and I don't think we can do that enough. But so along as Courtney said, being CEO and co-founder of Giant Step, you are an adjunct at NYU. I'm assuming in the Clive Davis program.
Correct.
Something I don't know why they won't hire me, but that's a whole nother. And he also, that's another discussion. He also hired.
Oops.
That's like,
it's
thank
fine.
you and good night.
It's fine. It's fine. I did help edit some papers. It's fine. It's okay. I prefer to be the woman behind the scenes.
I see it's not an issue then.
Right.
Yeah, no, I'm over it. Listen, working as an adjunct and two other schools, I've realized that being an adjunct, the glory that I thought it was is not what I thought it was. Yeah. No. You also host 2 podcasts, because that's just the kind of man you are. Disinfect with my fellow journalist, Matt Deal. And they look at this sounds hilarious, into the worst music ever recorded.
Oh, yeah.
Bring me on, baby.
A deep dive. Oh, yeah. We've done... The first season was on the worst covers. So we did everything from Paul Young's cover of Joy Division's Love Will Tear Us Apart.
Oh, you and I had it out because I love that cover.
Well, yeah.
I'm sorry.
To Madonna's cover
American
of
Pie.
Pie.
That literally is
horrible.
To Barbra Streisand's cover of Life on Mars.
Oh my God! I have the album that's on. It's so
sorry.
just like.
All right, and that's our show today, guys. Bye.
and Sammy Davis Jr.'s cover of Shaft.
Okay.
Oh wait, let me see the other podcast, and then we can just it's too hot for that. And
I'm trying to imagine what that even fucking sounds like.
I don't even want to think about it.
After this show ends, I'm clearly going online to get Sammy Davis Jr. cover Shaft.
And our guest for that was Carl Hancock Rocks, so Carl went right in there on that.
Oh, Carl. Listen, on a good day, Carl can be vicious. Okay, that's why I adore him.
He was kind.
We love him. And your other podcast is the Giant Step podcast, a journey into music and culture.
Correct.
Which is kind of where we want to jump off with you. So I took notes, Maura should be very proud of me. I wrote down your mantra because Courtney and I love it. And it says, Giant Step knows culture. Nothing communicates an emotion and a connection the way music can. It is the universal power to heal, excite, inspire, soothe, and cure.
Yeah, that's what we believe. So, and I think especially over, the recent times, I think music has been a very important healing tool for people. To deal with everything that's been going on, whether that's listening to music that comforts you from earlier in your life, that reminds you of better times, to discovering and being excited about new things, or using music for wellness in meditation and just keeping people calm. So I think the role of music has always obviously been important, because
none of us would be here without
preaching to the converted, but I think even more so now, So.
Music got me through the pandemic. I mean, I'd listen to, in the house, I started digging through my collection, listening to old stuff again and rediscovering artists and just going through their whole catalogs. And then, some of the new records, right? New pop records to take my mind off of it that made me dance. Jessie Ware made me dance through the
great
pandemic.
album. Yeah,
it's such a great album. Dua Lipa came and made me dance through the pandemic. Even Lady Gaga's Big Chromatica was such a club moment. I had my little dance moments in this house through the pandemic, and Kylie Minogue's Disco. I feel like there was some great pop. I feel like big pop, great dance records came at a time when no one could dance, but it still gave that energy and that feeling, and I loved it.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more.
Very much so. It's funny because after 9/11, and then we'll go to something a little happier, but after 9/11, I found that the hardest thing for me to do was to listen to music, because it's almost like I needed that silence. I needed to kind of reconnect, and then I could listen. So you guys started at as a label, and one of the things that's a club.
No, we didn't. We didn't.
Club, okay. Excuse me, a club. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's hot.
No, I mean, there's been many lives of Giant Step, so it's fine, because we're sort of different things to different people, but the mantra remains the same. But no, we started as a underground party in New York. But just before the Giant Step party started, we had something called the Groove Academy, which was a platform to put on the artists who had been heavily sampled but really forgotten. And, you know, that was reintroducing to a new generation artists like Bootsy Collins, Jimmy Castor, the Ohio Players, Maceo Parker, George Clinton, Gil Scott-Heron, Junior Walker. The list was pretty endless. And then from there started this party, Giant Step, which was originally supposed to sort of promote people dancing to jazz music, but we started incorporating hip hop, and it was at the same time when there were it was like a like-minded movement. You had Gang Starr doing the same thing. You had Tribe, you had Della, and then you had the movement that was in England and Europe. And then obviously out then came Diggable Planets and The Roots, and sort of from there.
It kind of snowballed from there. Yeah. It's so funny, and I'm wondering whether, because Europeans and British people have always had a very different purview of American, especially American Black music. And I'm wondering, you know, I've talked to British people about this before, but why is it that you see, like, why is it that a bunch of Brits would go, we need to reintroduce George Clinton, where an American might think, well, he's always been here, why do I need to reintroduce him?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. First of all, there's some people who would say, yes, he's always been here, but the majority of people would say, George who?
That's a good
point. I think that was the sort of the key thing. So I think why do British people have an appreciation of American music, especially African American music? And this goes back to, you know, why were the Rolling Stones obsessed by the blues? Why was Eric Clapton obsessed by the blues? Why were the Beatles obsessed by Chuck Berry? And it's because England is we're sort of in a way, all our information was coming from one place, meaning, this country was very divided in many ways. So you had radio, which was very divided. So if you were a certain type of person, you listened to a certain type of radio and you knew nothing else. And in England, we had only one or two sources of our media. We had a national radio station that played pop music, and pop music to me was everything from Motown to rock music to, you know, bubblegum pop music to singer-songwriters. We got a real mix. So, and then it's the same with TV. So we became obsessed by that music because it was great music, and we didn't really understand the nuances of the politics of what was happening behind that music in the United States. It's just bloody good music, and we're just obsessives, and I think the same with the Japanese as well.
Yeah, right. I mean, I was going to say, the way you were describing the music, the way you heard it, I mean, Courtney, you and I grew up in New York and we're about the same age. That would describe top 40 when we were growing up, right?
Listen, I tell people all of the time, I think music is more segregated now. I think back to an artist like Bobby Gentry. Oh to Billy Joe was a hit it was a top 10 hit on the black charts in Billboard, because it was called the black chart then, the pop chart, the adult contemporary chart, the country chart. You would never hear Bobby. Like, when you hear any kind of late night show on any black radio, you don't ever hear those records that crossed over anymore. It's just not done. It's not played. And I do find it interesting that I feel like some of that still bleeds over today with American radio. And American black radio, I think, has absolutely failed the black consumer, because there's still a lot of those artists and R&B artists who are not getting that played here today. Right now, if it's not sort of hip hop leaning and almost have the hottest rapper on it, where's that place for you? And then if you get like a white soul singer who comes and has that same voice, everybody jumps on these
Everybody jumps on that.
Revelation.
I think the difference is, though, that radio is less relevant now. Back then, it was the gatekeeper, and they were able to dictate people's tastes, which is what they did. Now, you can circumvent them, and it doesn't really matter, because, you know, kids are listening and finding their music out through the streaming services or YouTube. So they get on a certain algorithm. They are all of a sudden discovering music that they would not be serviced by radio for. True. So radio is, it's not irrelevant, but it's no longer the gatekeeper, which is why you have these young kids. That's why you're hearing these young DJs now. They're playing like old school stuff, and you're like, how do you know about this? And it's because it's also, everything's available to you now. When we were first doing Giant Step, it was like a secret. You either knew or you didn't know. It was that clear, you know, that you had the knowledge or you did not know what was going on. And in order to get that knowledge, we had to work very, very hard. We had to find the right publications. We go to Tower Records and we, you know, try and stand there reading all the magazines until we got told not to. You'd have to go and get the right import records, or you'd have to go to the right party or club to hear a DJ who was probably the only person who had that record.
Absolutely.
You know, so it was a very, you know, I really give kudos to those people back then, because they worked. You know,
it's almost like it was a secret language. And it's funny when you talk about radio, because Courtney brings this up a lot, and I see it because, well, you have high school kids, right? Teenage kids. And
one just graduated from
congratulations. And I work with high school kids, and if I were to say to a high school kid, radio, they probably don't even know what that word means. You know, they have no idea. They listen, they get all their information, music, TV, everything from YouTube. That's it.
Yeah, it's social. They're socials.
Absolutely.
So friends, you know, again, it's just basically radio.
And TikTok now.
It's not that relevant. It's not irrelevant, but they're not the gatekeepers.
So how do you, with that in mind, you guys sort of very intelligently and very successfully kind of went into a way where you were bringing the culture that you guys knew and sort of regenerated and shone a light on, and you moved it into a quote unquote corporate world. How, with the foundation being music, right? How did you guys do that?
Accidentally, like everything. That I wish I could say it was part of a master plan. It was not.
Just say it. No, just say it.
No, it was accidental. I think the biggest reason for that shift was, you know, we'd become very successful at marketing artists for record labels. So they would bring us on, this is before social media, they would bring us on to, first of all, give sort of a seal of approval to certain artists, and then also market them to our network of influencers and tastemakers, again, before social media. As the industry changed, and the streaming services happened and the labels hadn't quite figured it out, so did the budgets. So we went from, having very healthy marketing budgets for artists to having zero marketing budgets. So at that point, brands kind of started approaching us and saying, hey, we want to play music. We don't really know how to do it. Can you help us? So I think the first company we did that for was Levi's. We created a music platform for them that lasted about 4 years called Miles Ahead, that introduced great new artists. We created Steve Madden music for Steve Madden and brought in people like Katy Perry and Lady Gaga before they were famous. We were brought in by Intel to create and execute a big music platform for them. We did the same for Samsung. We oversaw their that experiential center in the meatpacking district. So that we were behind that, and that was everything from music to culture. That wasn't just music. And most recently, we done the global music strategy for W Hotels.
Nice.
And created a record label for them.
That's dope.
Which was an interesting, just an interesting way of them playing in music in a much more sort of authentic and valuable way. And then there's a bunch of other stuff we're working on that we can't really talk about. But
secret.
Yeah.
I want to go back a minute. I'm not really a nostalgia guy, but I have to go back to the parties because
me neither, by the way.
I'm really not. Like, people talk about, oh, do you remember this in your career? I'm like, was I at that shoot? They're like, yes. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. I think it was great. It was great. But what I do remember is just my career in the music industry starts in the 90s. So going to Giant Step parties, that was the lick, and not needing to know who was DJing, who was going to see perform, because I knew, oh, it's Giant Step. And what you guys did with the brand of Giant Step made us know, especially at that time, this is going to be quality. I'm going to leave there liking a bunch of things I know and hopefully discovering some new people. And I did always, like, how did that come about? Whose brainchild was the party?
Whose brainchild was the party? So I started Giant Step with somebody called Jonathan Rudnick, who I know Amy knows. I met him when I was an intern at the town hall. I was trying to just get into the music business and was failing miserably. So I ended up being the intern at the town hall, which was great, but I thought I was going to be an A&R man at at Warner Brothers with a corner office. And
meanwhile, you're at town hall, like the balconies of it.
Like making sure they were sort of like, the seats were proper.
Right.
And at night, I was working in restaurants to make money. Jonathan came there one day to try and pitch my boss on a series. He started to. I was in the same office. He started explaining who these artists were, and me, having a big mouth, I started saying, "Oh, that one won't sell any tickets. That one might sell tickets." And and my boss didn't know who he was talking about.
Right.
So at the end of it, he goes like, "Who the fuck are you?" So I go, "I'm the intern." So and then we started talking, and I said, what I really want to do is I want to do like a jazz dance party in New York, like. And he goes, "You mean like Dingwalls in London?" And I go, "Yeah, how do you know about Dingwalls?" So he was the first person I'd met who actually knew about this thing, dancing to jazz music. So we stayed in contact. I started doing my own parties. I was doing MK and Nels. And then when I first started working with Leon Thomas and the JBs, they wanted to play bigger venues. So I approached Jonathan, who was working at SOBs at the time, doing the publicity. And I said, "Can we do these shows here?" And Larry Gold, who owns SOBs, very kindly backed it because I had no money. And that's kind of how it started. And after a couple of months of doing the Groove Academy, Jonathan and I were like, "Why don't we start this jazz dance party?" And we called it Giant Step. So that's how it started. We never started it with the idea to make money. We're just passionate about giving a platform for all the great music that we knew was happening or was about to happen. And
didn't really have a home. It's like happy accidents.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what about the logo? Can we talk about the logo?
Absolutely.
I love that.
It's like,
that logo is timeless. It's
kind of like, nobody ever knows that they're going to have something that becomes iconic, right? You think about all the labels I've worked at, I've seen their logos change throughout the years. Nothing really stays the same. I mean, the Giant Step logo is pretty iconic. I was playing one of my alternate. I'm a huge alternate.
Alternate, so yeah.
And I pulled out my Twisted.
Oh yeah,
and
great song.
And I never realized, I didn't pay attention until I flipped the side over. The other side, I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Twisted was on Giant Step.
Yeah.
This single,
Yeah.
the For Hero and
what a track that is.
Such.
Oh God,
dude,
I love that.
Still sounds so
my God.
good, so good.
Well, thank Bill Coleman for that one. Because
we thank Bill Coleman every day.
Yes.
We wake up. You know how some people do a serenity prayer? We wake up and thank Bill Coleman for anything.
And I love that every time we say his name, everybody's like, Bill
Coleman. I know. He's like the magic entry. Bill Coleman. Bill Coleman.
So Bill I think Bill was working with Ultra, and I think she was working with Strictly Rhythm.
Yeah.
And she'd done the track Twisted with For Hero, and they were like, there's no house beat here. What do we do with this thing? Right. And Bill was like, it's okay. I have an idea. So he basically said, would you be interested in putting it out? I'm like, you mean For Hero and Alternate? I mean, you know, do I even have to think about this? You know? And he brought me Jody Watley as well. You know, so yeah. Saturday Experience. Oh, there's Twisted. Yeah.
He did bring Saturday Experience. That's it.
Yeah.
I said this to Amy when I was talking about Giant Step. I said, the dance that they chose to do, because there's a lot of dance you can go. The dance they chose to do, those songs still sound amazing. It was very smart, the ones you said yes to, really.
Well, I mean, look, it's purely selfish at the end of the day, because it's got to be music that I liked, and I New Eureka Soul, which is incredible. I mean, I didn't hear any music. It was just Louis venting to me on the phone that he had no record label in America, and I was like, well, I'm about to have a record label, Louis, so I'm signing you. It was like just based on knowing that Louis and Kenny were doing an album that was an ode to Hector Lavoe, Tito Puente, Royez, blah, blah, blah. It was like, that was enough for me. It's like, all right, where do I sign?
Right. What do you need?
And the same with, going to Donnie's album. Donnie told me about this concept called the Colored Section that he wanted to make a theme record on, and it was a no-brainer. I wasn't thinking, well, how are we going to market this thing, and what does it mean for an African-American, gay, Hebrew Pentecostal gentleman who's going to be writing about, the
Black experience
in a very
brilliant marketing.
It's like,
let's talk about the Black Israelite and his music.
Wait, in the 90s. Let's go.
I didn't think like that. I was like, oh my God, you mean I can actually be a part of something like that? Oh yeah, okay, let's do it. Because I mean, if you're not leading, you're just following, and then you're a nobody. Yeah.
And here we are. How do you feel about the album having a 20th anniversary reissue?
I think it's great because it's like anything you're involved with. You kind of don't listen to it for a long time, but over sort of last year when the pandemic was happening, especially with the sort of rise of Black Lives Matter and the George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and everything. And a friend of mine said, I was sitting with a friend and they were like, oh my God, I just love the Colored Section. It's really helping me through these. I was like, I put that record out. She was like, no. I did not know that. And I went and listened to it again. I was like, oh my God, this is a good record. I mean, I knew it was, but that it was talking about everything that was still happening.
It was prescient. It was very prescient in a lot of ways. And both prescient and it's a weird combination. It's like Gil Scott-Heron in a way. It was telling the future and speaking to the present at the same time.
And the past as well. And so I wanted to, as a company, say something about what was happening, but I also was conscious of what I thought was going on at the time, which was, I was calling it the woke Olympics. It was like a competition of who could be the most woke. And it was kind of annoying me, to be honest with you. I mean, so I said, instead of doing all of that, why don't we just have the colored section and have a discussion about it on, do it on Twitch. We'll get a group of people. Jason King moderated it. We brought Donnie on it, Rich Medina, Steve Harvey, who produced the record, and Nasser Troutman, who was his manager at the time, and myself. And we had a conversation about the colored section and its relevance today. And I think from that, Harry Wenger from
sigh. I have to sigh. I love Harry Wenger. There, continue.
Harry tuned in and afterwards was like, "Hey, we got to put this thing out again." And I was like, "Okay, let's do it." Great idea. Because I'd originally done it independently as a record, and then with the success that we were having. I needed a partner who could, help sort of fuel the fire.
And that's when you went to Motown.
I went to Motown, which
Yeah, I mean, and that's the interesting thing, right? Because Amy and I have talked about this record on the show where I was like, when that record was independent, you had all the buzz, you had everything, and you go to Motown, which has India.Arie at the time and Eric Carter. You would think this is a place where this type of record will flourish and shine, and it was almost like they didn't know what to do with him. Yeah,
and that's very, very good point. So when in those days when you signed. You had an independent record out and then you signed to a major. There was what they call, you kind of had to run down sort of the product that you had out there. So we had all this momentum and then we kind of had a lull because they had to get their stuff together. Right. And then I had to get my product out of the marketplace. And then, on top of that, again, it's like, you've got a record by a very obviously, gay, African-American, Hebrew Pentecostal artist who's singing about very controversial things. And, black radio and marketing, are pretty conservative.
Yeah.
So it,
I would say you're being kind.
I am being kind.
Yeah, I feel like he's suffered the same fate of like a Rasan Patterson. These are really talented guys. But if you're the black gay man, especially when they were putting out records,
your career was over.
It was like black radio just did not give them what it should have given
them. They were very conservative. And, and Donnie also, it was a lot for him to deal with because he was getting a lot of attention. And I don't think he really knew how to deal with that as well. So there were a lot of factors. And, sometimes when you make a record as brilliant as that, which has obviously stood the test of time, Marvin Gaye was not was a flawed human being. It's like Donny Hathaway was a flawed human being. I mean, so.
Not everybody's built for it, and not everybody. Some people they are true artists. Like I would say, there's a lot of singers, but we call everybody artists. Not everybody is an artist. Yeah. There are some people, and I've said this about Sinead O'Connor, right? You could tell those words have to come out of her. Right. It's not about, let me stand in front, you all love me. And sometimes when you have a record like that, where the press all jumps to it and the attention comes to you, not everybody can handle that kind of pressure to feel like, can I even follow this up? And not everybody really wanted that kind of thing. Some people just make records that it takes off like lightning in a bottle. And now you find yourself in this conundrum of not knowing really how to be an artist. And if you have any internal shit, here it is going to be exasperated 5,000% because not everybody is looking at you, having expectations from you. And that was back in the time where you had to go on a real promo tour. You had to do shows. You had to go on television. You went to Europe for at least 2 weeks when the album came out, and you had to do all of these things. And if you are not ready, it can be much.
Yeah, you got to tour, et cetera, et cetera. But also, I mean, it was a very pure soul album, which there was nothing like that out there at that time.
No, not at all.
You know, there was no real, you know, it was soul music. Now, if that would have come out now, everyone, oh yeah, we love soul music. That's you know, that's the. But back then it was, you know, the neo soul title, which was horrible.
Like, who came up with that?
A marketing person.
The same person who came up with the term acid jazz.
Acid jazz. I was just going to say that. And post-punk. And post-punk.
And the next one is new disco. This is new disco.
Yeah, with a U. With a U.
I'm like, what is that? Okay, thank you. What does that mean?
I wanted to ask you just a question, just for a second, about Giant Step, the marketing company just now, and then I was wondering, this is like my punk rock roots coming out here as opposed to my actual roots coming out now from the pandemic. Has there ever been a situation where you're with a corporation where you're like, we don't want to do this, this is not who we are, or they have said to you, this is not who we are, you know?
I mean, I'll give you an example with music artists. I used to turn down a lot of music artists. I was brought Maroon 5 at the beginning, and they were like, we want you guys to market this and give it the seal of approval. And I listened to it and I was like, guys, you're going to make a lot of money with these guys, but I ain't putting my name anywhere near this stuff.
Well, you know, when you do successful marketing, everybody wants the magic. They all want to go, where's that place? Go there.
It's like, I remember when we worked Jill Scott and Amy Winehouse, we did the marketing for them, and people were like, oh, what did you do? I was like, we didn't do anything.
Right.
We just, they did it all. All we did was we were given a piece of gold, and everybody wants gold. So,
and you put the plugs in the right socket,
so
literally.
We didn't do any,
Well,
but
Amy
the thing is, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. The thing is, it's harder to do than people think as someone who did marketing. You can have all the goods, but if you do not plug the right plugs into the right socket, you see how that can go down. So it is about the right marketing team with the right artists at the right time.
But if they produce gold.
Yeah, I mean, Amy Winehouse. I mean, I have this very emotional connection, Amy Winehouse, my name aside, just because she was somebody that record labels honed in on me in terms of work. You got to write about her. You got to write about her. Blah blah blah. And I was flattered. In hindsight, why? But she's somebody who it just seems so organic. Her connection here, because the people I covered her for were Black Music Magazine. I covered her for Double XL because of the Ghostface remix of That I'm No Good. So it really never felt like, and that's a credit to you guys too. It never felt like we were being marketed to, or patronized or something like that.
But the interesting thing is that I remember I got a call from Universal, and they're like, all right, so we've got this artist. You might not have heard of her. She's British. We want you guys to get on board and help us break her. I was like, what's her name? They got Amy Winehouse. I go, why wasn't Frank ever put out?
Right.
They were like, what? What's Frank? I go, the album that's been sitting in your...
the album they hired me to do the bio for. They hired me to do the bio for, and then it never came out.
It's like, what do you Oh, yeah. The Frank, yeah.
You know, I would say that little album she won the Ivor Novello Award for, you know, like the songwriting award,
that was so frustrating that you would have all this amazing music. And that's what's beautiful now about that, you know, you can circumvent a lot of the gatekeepers. You still need radio, you still need the big record labels, but you can kind of do it yourself, and then without needing a huge amount of money, and then they can come on board and discover.
What are you guys working on right now? I mean, what's sort of in the right? I mean, all right. Other than the Secret Squirrel stuff that you can't tell us about.
All right. So I just came back from Colorado. We did a big project for a CBD company. We're telling their story through music and film. I've created some
Courtney's ears just perked up. What?
The CBD?
Well, I'm more THC with a dash of CBD.
Me too, actually. What CBD?
That section I walked past in the dispensary to the good stuff.
Yeah, let me go to the good stuff.
We've been working with the BBC on something. Which I can't really talk about.
Understood.
We've just been asked to do music supervision on a very important documentary that I can't talk about. We are working with a sound company on a big project that I can't talk about.
All right, so clearly we have to invite you back in 6 months and you can spill your guts.
We're W Records, which was on hiatus during COVID. We are finally releasing an artist in August. We did all the recording. We've been working with an artist called Elsa y Elmar. She is a Colombian-born Mexican music artist. She's incredible. There's amazing music coming out of Latin America.
Nice.
So that's coming out in August. We're doing the reopening of Laban on Thursday with Ron Trent. There's other stuff. Old Navy are our longtime clients. We do all the music for them. There's other stuff.
Did you hook them up with HER?
No, I did not. I did not. That was their advertising. I kind of wish I had, but no.
Yeah. Who are you listening to these days? Courtney is like one of the most Courtney is like, bless his heart. He's turned me on to so much stuff, but that man listens to music the way that I watch television.
And right now, and what have I been doing? I've been going backwards. I've been having full 07 moments.
Right.
And I know that you guys were the U.S. distributor for the first 07 albums here.
Well, we did the marketing, and I put out the vinyl, but eventually they did a deal with another company.
They went to like Elektra or something, and
before that they went with a company out of California. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting. So who am I listening to at the moment?
Yeah,
So I mean, Salt have been absolutely brilliant. I'm really enjoying Little Sims. Who else am I? There's sort of like a bunch of music coming out of Latin America. I like the new Krangbin remix record a lot. There's another singer I really like called Kaja Bonet, who's doing some interesting stuff. The new Hidus Coyote album is great. They got Arthur Veracao on that, the Brazilian producer.
Nice.
Who else have I been listening to?
It seems like a lot of your focus is, and it's interesting, and it's good to hear your focus is, we always think in terms of certain geographical areas, and I like hearing that your focus is going Latin America, stuff like that,
Oh, yeah. Well, I do music strategy for a lot of brands, and especially when I'm helping them think globally, the archetype has definitely shifted in what we see and where we're getting our cultural information from. So back in the day, we would get our cultural information from New York, London, Los Angeles, Paris, Berlin, the Tokyo, the kind of the obvious places. That's right. Paris. That's where we get all our music from, our fashion from, our culture, our art, etc. But now, we're in much more of a global economy. So, the archetype is no longer those places. It's Bogota. It's, Shanghai. It's Cape Town, Johannesburg. It's not the obvious places. So with that said, there are these other areas to really discover a lot of incredible scenes that are happening.
Right.
Court, you got anything you want to? I mean, he's speaking your language there for sure.
I mean, to me, it just makes sense. I think when I talk to people about music, I'm like, there's a whole world for you to discover. Don't just look at these small little things, and expand your mind, and you will be amazed at so many artists you've never heard of that are coming out with really amazing rhythms and textures. And I'm glad that we're starting to see, like you said, everything was always New York, Paris, London, these artists from here. But now we're starting to get more artists from Latin America. We're starting to get those rhythms from Africa.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
And textures. And, America's still a little slow to catch up, I notice, especially with African artists and those rhythms. But like you said, we're in a world of these kids. You have a whole computer in your pocket. It's all available to you there. And that's what I love.
Which it wasn't for us.
No,
right, not at all.
But we have magazines. You see, I worked in record stores. I worked in Tower. I worked at the Wiz. I used to read every trade, sit there and go through all of the different magazines from all over and, go to the record store and spend hours upon hours just going through the racks. And I'm glad, even it's because vinyl's a little bit of fad for people, I'm glad to see young people back in record stores and having that discovery again. And when I'm in my little local shop, there's zines again, because I used to get a lot of stuff from zines. So I love seeing that culture come back and giving people something that's not an algorithm to say, look at this, but actually discovering it because you're in a store and you're hearing something be played. And
the only downside is that they're not paying the writers anymore, but that's a whole nother conversation. But I'll add that on to my bitterness about the Clive Davis program.
Okay. Oh, God. Okay.
Well, just keep
and on
it
that note.
No, I am kidding about that. And you're right, Courtney. It's great to see. It goes cyclical. It goes cyclical. And the important thing is that we have fans and we have the artists. And Maurice, we have people like you.
And we still have Giant Step is still out there being at the front line, kind of. Ushering this stuff in for people.
I think it's interesting about the fans that that more people, obviously the pandemic happened, but more people want to go out to shows more than ever now.
Oh my God!
People are, again, back in the day when we put on an artist who was unknown. A lot of times, other than having the Giant Step seal of approval, we didn't have very much else for them.
Right
now. Because people hadn't heard the music, it wasn't on the radio.
Right.
No one was writing about it. You couldn't get the product here, or if it was here, no one could find it. Whereas now, you can find everything. You just got to help direct people to where it is.
Absolutely,
that's the difference.
Well, we want to thank you so much for doing this, Maurice. It's been a rough year and a half for all of us. And we're so glad that you guys are thriving and continuing. You're talking to two dyed-in-the-wool fans. I mean, you guys were like, if it's that I've always liked you very much as a human being.
She doesn't know me very well. She doesn't know me very well.
That's the best way to like me as well. From a distance.
We're going to do a great Giant Step playlist to go along with this show that'll come out.
Yeah,
We're going to be a retrospective of everything from to modern. And thank you for coming on. Thank you guys for listening to us. Thank you, Pantheon Podcast family. And remember, guys, follow us on our Facebook because you're old like us. So that means you all have Facebook. So I'm going to let you finish all one word. For you young people, we're on Instagram at I'm going to let you finish NY. And for you people who are reverent and don't like your parents, we're on Twitter at FinishIma. And you can listen to us wherever you hear your greatest podcast because you're listening to us right now. We'll see you next week. Thanks a lot. Happy Pride because it's still June. And for the rest of you, happy 4th of July weekend because it's about to be 4th of July weekend and all that good shit. And we'll see you next week.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
And now another no-brainer money-saving tip from Progressive.
Well, looks like your luggage is over 50 pounds. Is there anything you can take out?
Oh yeah, let me just toss all these $20 bills.
Great. Let me grab you a trash can.
Stop. Instead of throwing money away, move some clothes into a carry-on. And here's a better tip from Progressive on how not to waste money. Don't pay too much for car insurance. Drivers who switch and save could save hundreds. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary.
It's NFL draft season, and that means it's time to start thinking about fantasy football. FantasyPoints.com features industry-leading experts and prognosticators using proprietary hand-charted data to help you score more fantasy points. FantasyPoints.com is the place to go for whatever kind of fantasy football you play. Whether you play fantasy football, daily fantasy sports, or do a little bit of everything, Fantasy Points has the meticulously researched content to guide you to victory. And why wait for the fall? Fantasy Points also covers the new spring football league, the UFL. Join the guru, John Hansen, Scott Barrett, Joe Dolan, and other massive names in the fantasy football universe with an exclusive offer. Use code Pantheon for 15% off any Fantasy Points package, including the all-in package, with access to every article, tool, and data nugget that Fantasy Points has to offer. That's FantasyPoints.com and code Pantheon for 15% off at Fantasy Points. FantasyPoints.com, code Pantheon. Score more fantasy points.